Oh, nice burn. Oh my gosh. Oh shoot. It's going pretty good.
Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of According to Kirk. If you missed the first episode, I'm Kirk, and I am an engineer, World Cup racer, and test rider at Norco. And I'm joined today by a special guest.
Hey everyone, I'm Lucas Cruz. I'm a World Cup downhill racer for the Norco race division, and today we're going to be talking about high pivots.
Nice.
Guys, this is my bike. It's a brand new Norco site, 150 rear, 160 front, and with the high pivot layout. And I've been racing with Norco now since 2020, so I've seen lots of different versions of their high pivot bikes, and I've loved them all, but I really like my bikes to feel like a bit of a trophy truck, so they can just absolutely plow through the roughest stuff, but also very nimble and agile.
So while Lucas is riding our production site, I'm actually riding a test mule site that was put in service in 2021 when we started the development of the bike. So after seeing the benefits of a high pivot layout in our RMHSP downhill bike and range enduro bike, we wanted to see if we could blend some of those features into a shorter travel package like the site here or the object. So as we look down at the site mule in front of me here, you can immediately notice that the main pivot is not quite as high as you'd see on the RMHSP or the range. And that's to sort of blend some of the characteristics that you might want out of a shorter travel bike, like a little snappier climbing with that great momentum carry that you get from a high pivot. So I'll walk you through a few of the adjustments that we used in the development process. We wanted to be able to tune the idler position and tooth size to really dial in the anti-squat to get a nice snappy climbing bike, but also balance that with the right amount of pedal kickback while descending. Another thing we spent a lot of time in development on is getting the kinematics correct. And you can see that this upper link arm and lower shock mount both have a bunch of adjustability that we could use to really fine tune the kinematics. This testing led to the development of our missing link kit, which you can get for your production site or object, that allows you to switch between 29 or MX without altering the kinematics of the bike. Let's go for a rip.
Amen, brother. Let's go. Axle path. The axle path is the path that the axle takes.
Yeah, so when people talk about high pivots, you will often hear the word axle path as well, and the rear wheel just moving upward and away from any obstacles it's gonna encounter on the trail. And this is kind of an inherent characteristic of high pivot bikes because the main pivot is higher than the rear axle.
So pretty much your bike grows a little bit as you compress through stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that really smooths out a lot of the smaller chatter.
Yeah, I think like you said before, momentum carry. I mean, we talked about that a lot in racing, but I think for everyday riders as well is very noticeable.
It just doesn't get hung up on stuff as much.
Yeah.
Really keeps the momentum moving forward. And
that goes for when you're descending, I think, is what most people think about high pivot bike excelling at, but also when you're climbing too, you can really sit down through some bumpy terrain, and then you also have really good grip when you're climbing up steep pitches.
But the work you guys have done with this bike, it doesn't feel like the rearward axle path is sluggish at all or slowing you down. Going through its travel, it's almost like free speed on the uphill and the downhill, so.
That's a good way of putting it. I think that's something that people are also hesitant about on high pivot bikes, is that they're gonna feel sluggish or they're gonna feel weird in corners because the rear center of the bike is growing.
Throughout my time at Norco, trying all different kinds of stuff you guys have built, from the Orem to the Range, and then the Range DH, and then now the DH prototype bike. It's really been fine-tuning that kind of balance between the monster truck feeling, but also have something to push against and keep your speed up.
Talking about all the other Norco bikes you've ridden, I think we've learned throughout actually having quite a lot of experience in high pivot bikes is that maybe the RMHSP being like an extremely rearward axle path.
And it was just an insane bike going straight down the hill, but it had some drawbacks in like the tight corners and stuff. And then now with these newer bikes, it's just really the best of both worlds. Witness the legitness. Ultimate traction, baby. If you don't mind doing like a stylish nosedive, maybe a little Ronnie Mac. Thanks.
Is that what we're going for?
Ready?
Okay. We talked about the rearward axle path that a high pivot layout has. earlier. And with that comes some growth in the chain as the bike cycles through its suspension. So you can imagine the chainring and the cassette getting further apart as the bike compresses.
And that was almost the original reason you needed the idler, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the role of the idler, where that comes in, is to manage that chain growth so that it doesn't create pedal kickback, which is like a sharp spike and rotation of the cranks through your feet.
And you really feel that if you got something going wrong, but
Yeah, like if we were to ride the downhill bike without an idler, it'd probably be like quite unrideable. And what that idler is ultimately adjusting is the anti-squat characteristic of the bike. So kind of how the chain force interacts with your suspension as you pedal and as you descend. Coming back to idler position, what do you look for in that adjustment for downhill racing, and what's your kind of preferred setup?
well, depended on a couple of things, like your hub engagement was a big one for me, and feeling the feedback through my feet and kind of changing that on the second point, which is the track and the track conditions. So if you're looking for a bit more traction, you could tune it one way, versus if you're looking for a bit more drive and something to push off of out of the turns, then you could go the other way. It was really cool to see the differences just on changing the size as well as position. And I think you guys played around with that a lot on the mule. So with these bikes, I think you guys really optimized it for all around and all conditions.
Yeah, that's another thing that I think with this mule that I'm riding, we learned a lot about idler location and finding the balance of tuning that for not only descending well, but really obviously on the site, especially in the optics, it's a really high priority for them to pedal well too. So yeah, it really even just like gives us another tuning tool that you don't actually have on a bike without an idler. Kind of gives us more options to find the right balance between descending and climbing performance. And then for these bikes too, we spent a long time developing the tooth profile of the idler and messing around with chain line and stuff like that to get the smoothest pedal feel that we can.
Yeah, that's another thing that people always ask me about high idler bikes, and they're worried about the drag and everything to do with it. But I've been climbing with these things a lot, and it's really amazing how well they pedal.
That was fun.
Don't worry about your bike. Pedal to the metal. Put it in the catch up. Red line, catch up.
Oh, it's going fast.
So Kirk, is there any concern about the longevity of these idlers and the wear on the system?
That's definitely been a reservation for people when they consider buying a high pivot bike. And yeah, we've definitely heard that and spent a lot of time working to make that a non-issue on these bikes. We've done a bunch of lab tests and on-trail blind testing to sort of find the best tooth profile, material, coatings, and size of the idler. We also didn't want to add any extra maintenance, so the coating and the material that we've selected also is going to last as long as your chainring does. We're on an adventure ride now.
Yeah, just gonna lead well into, according to Kirk, episode 3, getting lost in the woods. Oh, that square edge bump just felt like nothing.
Yo,
Whoa,
this guy's going pretty good. Going pretty good for his second day back on the bike.
thanks for having me, Kirk.
Good ride.
Yeah, it was fun. So we got the thanks for having me, Kirk. What's after that?
Thanks for tuning in, guys. And if you have any questions or liked anything in the video, let us know in the comments.
Yes, please. Thanks.
I kind of like being a YouTuber. Like, not very good at it, but it's kind of fun.